guys, Ina here. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have a very special video. I will talk about 5 orchids that I own and I recommend for beginners, orchids that are very easy to look after, orchids that I think suit most type of environments. If you have some intermediate temperatures, you don't need any cool down during winter, or I don't know, a super special treatment, high humidity around, or some sort of special gadgets to keep these plants. So come with me if you're interested in knowing a little bit more about them. This one is not one of them, unfortunately. I know that most of you probably are thinking that it's just to show you one of my beautiful flowers. This is a common hybrid that we found locally here. It's all around supermarkets and garden centers. But I didn't include these types of Phalaenopsis on this video because I don't think they suit everyone. I think they are great if you live in a country where you have proper winter. If you live in very hot tropical countries where you don't have any cool down during winter time, especially if you don't live on top of mountains or things of the sorts, I wouldn't recommend you to have these plants because they need a change in temperature to understand that it's their time to bloom. So it would be a little bit more difficult for you to have blooms every year if you don't have this cool down. I come from a tropical country, so talking about specifically about my country, like Brazil. So for example, if you live, let's say in the state of Rio, but not on the mountains or anything, if you don't have a whole month with 15 degrees during the night, you probably won't rebloom these plants. If you live in northeast or north of the country that is not top of mountains or some sort of things, you won't be able to rebloom these plants. It's the same thing for people that live around the equator. If you don't have some differentiation in temperature, it would be very hard. That's why I don't recommend this plant specifically, but let's start. I have my phone here in front of me just to tell the name of the parents of some of these plants because yeah, I don't want to get it wrong. Anyway, this is one of them. So this massive plant here, I hope you can see it. It's one of them. This one is my Oncidium cherry baby. It is a cross between Oncidium James Sutton and Oncidium Honolulu. So I don't know if I pronounced it right. It will be down on the description. Just some general information. I think it's nice to have some general information about the plant. And I'm starting with this one because this orchid is super tough and easy to grow. Very easy to grow. It has pseudobulbs that store water. It needs to be watered when the medium is dry, but more than that, it's a very easy to care for plant. It blooms every year for me. It can bloom more than once a year. The only thing that you have to provide for this plant is place it near one windowsill in your home where you have like bright light, but be careful with direct sunlight because you can burn the leaves of these plants. But more than that, if you provide some natural light, water it when the medium is dry, this plant will grow super well and will produce a bunch of large blooms. The only thing about this plant, as a caveat here, is that it produces many plants that smells like chocolate. That's what people say. This orchid is very famous because it's known as the chocolate orchid. I don't think it's exactly chocolate, but it's a very sweet scent. So if you have sensitivity, I don't like the smell of this plant, the fragrance of this plant. For me, it's too matte, so it can't sit very close to me. That's the only thing that I will tell you. But if you love fragrance, people that love fragrance adore this plant so much. Exactly because of its fragrance. It's a very famous plant. It produces tiny flowers, but in a great quantity. And I think the most amazing feature of this plant is the fragrance. That's why people love it so much. It is a massive plant. Look at the size of that. It's full of roots inside this pot. It's very thirsty because it's very big. So the only thing that you have to keep in mind is like keep watering this plant and treat it normally like you treat an orchid that you have. If you're a beginner, since that's the top 5 orchids for beginners, what I would suggest is pot it in a medium for epiphyte plants because it is epiphyte. It grows on top of tree branches and trees. So it needs to have a medium that provides some air around its roots. It can be organic, inorganic. I use bark and moss. Maybe if you live in a very hot country, you can use only moss. If you live in cool countries like I do, maybe only bark or inorganic material. But for epiphyte plants, If you treat it like any epiphyte, air around its roots, give it water, fertilize it using the right amount of fertilizer that's on the label, the fertilizer for orchids that you choose, give it some water and leave it near a windowsill. It's a very easy plant to look after. It will bloom for you maybe more than once a year. It's not an expensive orchid, and you can find it, I think, easily around the world. I don't know United States, but I know in Brazil it is available, for example, in flower shops, because a friend showed me pictures. You can find it here in nurseries. There are some nurseries in the UK that sell it, maybe divisions. You can find divisions as well, because it's a plant that people can divide because it's quite large and grows very quickly. Orchids are usually slower growers. This one is not. So again, if you love fragrance, if you want to have needs to care for a plant, if you're starting your orchid hobby, I super suggest the Cherry Baby. Let's go to the next one. Next on my list is Paphiopedilums. I do believe Paphiopedilums are perfect orchids for beginners. Some people don't like them because they can be very slow to grow and to become mature and to bloom and rebloom. Sometimes they skip 1 year and they will only rebloom on the next year. This one is an evergreen, so the leaves are only green all the time, but we have some mottled-leaved Paphiopedilum, and that they are great houseplants as well because the leaves are amazing. So although they don't bloom all the time, you can have them as decorative piece at your home. Why I chose Paphiopedilums? Specifically, I have 2 hybrids that I think are perfect for beginners. Pinocchio is one of them, and the other one is the Paphiopedilum Maldier Green Fema. I think I will leave the name down below, because this one is a sequential bloomer. So I have it in bloom for 3 months now. So I have here one bloom that's fading, another blooming here, and I have buds on the way. So it starts blooming and will bloom for many months, which is great because you have flowers for longer. The Paphiopedilum Pinocchio is a cross between Paphiopedilum primulinum and, one second, let's check, and Paphiopedilum glaucophyllum. One is from Central Sumatra and Java, and the other one is also from the island of Sumatra. This one, yeah, it's a very famous hybrid because it is a sequential bloomer. It has hairy petals, which is great. The pouch is purple. I've seen one of its parents, the primulinum, on a garden show, I don't know, somewhere, and it's green, but the flower is exactly like the same one of its parents. So it has no fragrance at all. But what I think is great is that these plants, they don't need bright light. You can leave them in a place with indirect sunlight. They will grow, they will mature, and they will bloom. Another thing that is very nice about these plants is that they are semi-terrestrial or terrestrial plants. So they are not epiphytes, which is different from the other orchids that I will talk to you about today. You can have soil mixed with perlite and bark. You can do some semi-terrestrial mix for this plant to retain some humidity. The only thing about this plant is that they need their humidity. If you forget to water them for very long, they will suffer. You need to provide and give their water. But more than that, if you provide humidity around the root system, they need to be completely potted because they are not epiphyte. So you can't have them hanging like epiphyte plants that you can attach them to a tree trunk, for example. The Cherry Baby, you can do it because it is an epiphyte, but this one needs to be potted. So if you want to have a potted orchid that you can place everywhere, that will probably want to distress it at your home, especially with intermediate temperature. If you live in a very hot country, you need to add something to keep humidity on this pot. They need the water or water it more frequently. But these orchids, they are very, very easy to look after. I don't think they are difficult. And the Paphiopedilum Maldier as well, it's very easy. The thing is, the Maldier has mottled leaves. So if you prefer mottled leaf puffs, go for that. None of these two are big, large plants. They are quite compact, so they save space as well. And the Maldier green, I think it's great. It's not a sequential bloomer, but it blooms every year, which is amazing for Paphiopedilums. So the next orchid that I would suggest if you're a beginner and want to start the orchid hobby, yeah, it's a Paphiopedilum. and I just suggest two hybrids that I think are very, very easy, and they will bloom for you every year. Next one. The next one must be a surprise because I've never seen that on a list for beginners, but I think this orchid is very easy to grow. Very easy to grow. And I've seen people that live in different environments that I do. Just for information, I live in London, so I live in a cool weather, intermediate climate inside my home, so it's not warm or hot most of the year. I do have a very short hot season. Anyway, the next orchid, I found it so easy to grow. Like the Paphiopedilum Pinocchio that I've just showed here, the blooms last for a very long time. I was very surprised. This plant bloomed for me in the end of winter here, so it was around, let's say, December. And the flowers faded in May, I think. Yeah, May. April to May. It's amazing, and it's a very tough plant. I forgot to water it, and it was okay. Even with the hot weather, it is okay. During the cool season, it was okay. So for me, it is a tough plant. This one, different from the other two that I just showed you, the other three actually, it's a species, so grows naturally in Mexico, Guatemala. It's known to be a cool to intermediate grow plant, but I found it amazing to grow. Very, very easy. The flowers are orange and beautiful. They are not large, they are small, but the color is so vibrant that calls attention whenever you go. This one, I don't know if I have guessed it until now. If you have guessed it, if you have orchids and you guess what I was talking about, you can leave a comment down below. So this one is the Prostechea vitellina. The Prostechea vitellina, again, is a species that grows on the mountains in Mexico, Guatemala. It is epiphyte as well, so you have to treat as your other epiphyte plants, providing air on the pot. Oh gosh, it's pretty dry, I need to water it. But the thing that you need to do is pot it in something that will have air around the root system. If you have in a place that you have an outdoor garden that you can attach it on a tree, do it as well. I can't do it. I prefer to keep it potted because it helps me with watering, and I can't leave them outside. Inside your home, if you have intermediate temperature, this plant will do amazingly. The only thing it needs some bright light. So again, if you live in a north country like I do, some south or eastern window. I think if you live in the south hemisphere, so it would be more like a northern window, I think. So it needs its bright light, but if you provide the bright light near a windowsill, water when the medium is bone dry. What I don't think this plant likes is to be soggy. The cherry baby, you can keep it evenly moist, wet. This one needs to dry out. That's something for you to keep in mind. But I let the medium to dry out completely. It grows super nicely. I have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pseudobulbs. And the last one that bloomed for like, I don't know, 4 months is producing two new growths now. Sits under my shelving under some growing lights because I don't have space on my windowsill. It's packed at the moment, but grows super nicely. Again, fertilizer during the growth. Provide some fertilizing when this plant is actually growing, like now, and when it's blooming, when the pseudobulbs completely mature. If you have seasons when it's a little bit cool, cold, you can space your fertilizer. More than that, pot it somewhere. Can be organic medium like I do, with bark, moss, inorganic as well. This plant will do amazingly well. For me, to be honest, the Prostechea vitellina is much easier than any Cattleya that I have here. I have many Cattleyas. They are not I love them so much, but they don't like me that. I think with the same intensity. I never got the care perfectly right. But with this Prostechea vitellina, oh my God. It's perfect. I think you should try one, and I think they make great plants for beginner. So if you want to try a species, a new one, look in nurseries around you live. You won't find these one in supermarkets. No way. I don't imagine it. But you have to go to orchid suppliers, people that sell orchids. Don't collect it from nature, please. only place that sell it with certificates and everything, so we don't affect the actual environment that they grow into. But anyway, I super suggest these plants. Have a look, and I think we will love the flowers as well. It's so beautiful, so bright. I love it so much. Oh, it doesn't have any fragrance again. Sorry, I love fragrance, but I'm very specific with the fragrance that I like. So I have one more flower with fragrance, and then the next one won't have any fragrance. But anyway, I love colors, I love plants. I hope you enjoy the list that I'm creating here. Next one, I hoped I had something more beautiful to show you. Something mounted on my flower. It's not nice. I don't have pets. I don't know what it was. The window was open. I don't know what happened here. But anyway, something mounted on that. I know that I mentioned that I wouldn't suggest any Phalaenopsis, but I won't suggest any Phalaenopsis hybrids that you find on supermarkets. I don't suggest that type of Phalaenopsis, but an orchid that I think are great for beginners everywhere on the world, because you don't need any drastic temperature drop to grow these plants, even in warm and hot countries. It's the Polychilos Phalaenopsis. So Phalaenopsis is a huge genus of orchids and has many subgenus. So one of the subgenus is the Polychilos type. So we have some species like the Phalaenopsis vitellina that I do have here as well. I think it's beautiful. They are fragrant. I'm not gonna say that I love all of their fragrance because I don't have so many, and I know that they have different type of fragrance. But for example, the vitellina for me is the perfect fragrance because it smells like a very floral, fruity, fresh. That's how I would describe it. The flower spike is short, so each can produce more than one flower, but usually each flower spike will produce one flower. But they come with different colors. There are so many hybrids out there. This one is one hybrid that I love so much because it smells like the vitellina and it's blooming like non-stop. It's very easy to look after as well. So this one is Phalaenopsis linden mix zebra 709. Again, if you want to have these plants perfect, the same care as any Phalaenopsis, it's an epiphyte plant, so it needs to have air around its roots. You can use bark, you can use moss, you can use an organic medium. I will leave a link down here for how to care for your first orchid if you want to check how to look after Phalaenopsis. But the thing about this Phalaenopsis is, I think everybody can have it and can rebloom it if you have a warm season. So, for example, mine only rebloom in summer here because we don't have a warm season all over. But when we think about tropical countries, these plants come from tropical countries, so they do rebloom many times a year for people that live in warmer countries, which is great, which is amazing. So again, they are great because the flower spike is short, so if you don't have much space, that's one for you. It's not that I don't suggest the hybrids for beginners, I do, but you need to live in a place where you can provide a cool down during winter. If you don't, go for a Polychilos type. The only thing about the Polychilos type is not as affordable as the hybrids, and you need to go for usually orchid nurseries to find it. We don't find this type of Phalaenopsis everywhere as we find the other Phalaenopsis. That's the only downside of it. More than that, I love this plant so much. Phalaenopsis is one of my favorite type of orchids. I think everybody loves Phalaenopsis, or most of the people love Phalaenopsis. But anyway, there we go. Now let's go to the fifth orchid that I suggest for beginner. Is the last one. And it's not a monopodium, it's another sympodium that grows pseudobulbs as well. I hope you enjoy. So, just because I love Cattleyas and I have much luck with them, but I love them. And if a Cattleya is growing very well with me, she can handle anyone. I do believe that. I'm sorry, I know that it sounds weird, but I do believe if a Cattleya is doing super well, she can do super well with you as well. And I think this Cattleya is the kind of Cattleya that is pretty tough, will create many roots super fast and quickly. It will grow fast as well, and also it can tolerate, I don't know, almost everything. The only thing that you have to provide is bright light. It needs to be in a window like this one, pretty bright light, especially during spring and summer, to be able to bloom and grow the pseudobulbs of these plants. This one is the Cattleya aurantiaca. This one is a hybrid, it's the Mishima's pot, so it was crossed with sibling. But I have the species as well. Each grows like a very elongated pseudobulbs, and each one of them can produce many flowers. The thing about this Cattleya is that the flowers are tiny. They are not like the large and fluffy flowers. So the flowers are very tiny and they don't have any fragrance. But oh my gosh, the orange one, the color. I was talking about the vitellina, it's beautiful, but I've never seen this color. It's like a very bright and dark orange color, full of like red spots. It's gorgeous. It produces many blooms, like one pseudobulb that matured produced many blooms. And again, I super suggest this one if you want to start with Cattleyas and if you're a beginner, because I think you will do pretty well with it. You will learn a lot about Cattleyas before you get others, and that this one will help you navigate through it and also will reward you with many beautiful blooms. So that Cattleya, I know that can thrive with everyone because they grow, they are between cool to hot growing because they grow in high altitudes as well. It's quite good because they are perfect for our home environments, you know, they can grow quite well inside our homes. But again, they are epiphytes, so you need to provide air and also moisture. When you see that the pot's completely dry, you provide some water. Cattleyas need to dry out in between their watering, so I always watch to check if everything is dry, and then I offer it some water and some pretty bright light, and it's growing and producing new pseudobulbs like nothing. So I do believe that this one is perfect for beginners. So if you want to try a Cattleya, have a first Cattleya, I think the aurantiaca is the one for you. Yeah, so that was the last plant that I want to talk to you about. It's pretty dehydrated. I need to water this plant immediately. It happens anyway. It's warm and yeah, it has a massive growth here, massive. To conclude this video, that's for the top 5 orchids that I would suggest if you're starting the orchid hobby, if you will learn more about some of these plants. We're talking about different genus, subgenus of plants that I think are great. Orchids, they are very rewarding, and I think they can teach you a lot because each plant that you try, they may have a slightly different requirement. You can watch them grow and produce new roots, and every time they bloom for you, at least for me it's like that. Every time that I see them blooming, that I have a healthy plant, I feel so proud of my plants because they are super great. And yeah, if you want to spend some money on plants, I would go with the ones that you can learn and will be easier for you to grow. And then I would start, if you want to collect more, I will get the more difficult ones later. Just because if you don't want to lose any plants, you will lose some on the way if you want to collect them. But for starters, I think these ones are the greatest ones. I love them so much. I found them so easy. And yeah, and let me know if you have any of these plants down below. Which one is your favorite? Which one do you think you really want to get? And let me know if you enjoyed this video and what I want to see here. I would be super happy to hear from you. And please subscribe to my channel. It helps me a lot. And I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.